Jesus way,
oh, the Jesus way,
is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way,
Oh, the Jesus way,
is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When He is King, all wars will cease. May His peace begin with me.
The question, what would Jesus do, has been asked by many people. We'd like to know, what would Jesus do if He lived today? Some have asked, what kind of car would Jesus drive? Would He walk or ride a bike? Would Jesus be a vegetarian? Or would Jesus own a house? Perhaps rent an apartment? Or live in a tent? 3 Sunday school teachers at the Palmyra Church of the Brethren in Palmyra, Pennsylvania asked the question of their class. If someone was hungry and they came by the church, what would Jesus do? The class responded, Jesus would feed them. Well, 7 years have gone by since that question was asked. And we're going to show you the answer to that question. Welcome to Brethren Voices. I'm Brent Carlson. The Sunday school teachers Cindy Bortner, Elaine Hoffer, and Betsy Myers could not have dreamed of what would result from that simple question they asked 7 years ago. The class responded, Jesus would feed them. And they decided to do a food drive and collect food for those who are hungry. And the food was collected and was given to those who came by the church, to the people who are hungry. The kids said, that's what Jesus would have done. The word got out and another church heard about it, and so the story unfolds. That church referred a family to the Palmyra Church of the Brethren for food as they didn't have any food to give out themselves. Later, possibly feeling a little troubled that they didn't have a resource of their own, they began collecting food and sent it over to the Church of the Brethren to help out. Well, 7 years later, the effort is now known as the Caring Cupboard, and 25 area churches are involved. A little later, we're going to show you what's happening these days in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, and actually visit the Caring Cupboard. Brethren Voices met with some of the youth who had actually been in that Sunday school class 7 years ago.
Hey!
This year, to commemorate Lent, the junior and senior youth groups decided to do a special project, collecting 1,000 rolls of toilet tissue and 1,000 boxes of Kleenex. To publicize the project, the youth produced a video called The Chronicles of Tissue Tyler.
Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thank you, Tissue Tyler.
No problem.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony.
Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thank you, Tissue Tyler. Thank you.
Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thank you, Tissue Tyler.
No problem.
Well, marriage is not easy. It's all his fault.
Got an issue? Take a tissue. Thank you, Tissue Tyler. No problem. Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thanks, Tissue Tyler.
No problem.
How many of these onions do we need to cut? I don't know. It seems like 100.
Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thanks, Tissue Tyler.
No problem.
Oh, my glasses are so dirty.
Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tissue
Tyler.
No problem.
You have a square to spare? Girl, I got no square to spare.
Got an issue? Take a tissue.
Thank you, Tissue Tyler. Thank you! Tissue Tyler solved a lot of our issues. Tissue Tyler needs more tissues.
So Tissue Tyler can solve our tissue issues.
So bring in tissues for issues.
Thanks, Tissue Tyler.
No problem.
What a great video. Tell us more about the Chronicles of Tissue Tyler.
It wasn't really written. We knew that we were trying to raise as many facial tissues as we could, and we were trying to figure out a way to advertise it better, especially to the church, the congregation in general. And we thought that a video with a mascot, Tissue Tyler, would be a great way to do that. So one night the youth got together, and over about an hour we ran around the church and made some different skits about when people need facial tissues, why they're important, why we need them for the caring cupboard. And we sort of had a lot of fun with it, and I think it was a pretty good success.
We asked them about the project and what they remembered about the event of 7 years ago.
Well, the Caring Cupboard was started about 10 years ago by the children's department. A group of the teachers had this vision that they would have a cupboard in the church filled with food so that when people came in looking for a meal or a snack and they couldn't afford it, there would always be food there to give them. And soon it grew and it filled the entire kids department, and then it got big enough that the Palmyra Area Cooperating Churches, which is PAC for short, bought up a new building and everything moved over there, and it's grown a lot bigger since, and we're really proud of the progress it's made.
How old were you when all of this started?
I was a wee little tyke. I think I was 6. The class we were in was 1st through 4th grade, and then we had the kindergartners mixed in there. So it was this big age group of kids. There were a lot of different kids back then. So there was a lot of input from a lot of different ages, which helped.
So how did the group go about getting the contributions of the tissue? Did you knock on doors? Did you put out a flyer or an advertisement? What did you do?
We didn't really need to go knocking on doors. The congregation's usually pretty good about helping us out when we have a project like this. So we just put together our video series and had our Tissue 2012 campaign. And sure enough, they showed up. So it's nice to know that they're willing to help us out with these kinds of things.
When we heard about the project, Brethren Voices wanted to make a special contribution to contribute to the effort. So, digging deep into our pockets, let's see what happens.
Are you ready? Thank you.
Thank you.
60 here, that makes over 1,000.
We then met with the pastor of the Palmyra Church of the Brethren, Dennis Lohr. He shared the story of how the Caring Cupboard came into being.
Look, the Caring Cupboard began, I'm going to guess, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago in one of our children's Sunday school classes. And the teachers were talking to the kids about what they thought Jesus would want them to do. And the kids decided that if somebody came by the church hungry, that Jesus would want them to have some food to share with them. So they decided to take one of the cabinets in the Sunday school room, and they painted it up, and they called it the Caring Cupboard, and they began to bring food items in to keep in the cupboard. And in those days, if somebody came by the church maybe once a month or once every 2 months asking for food, that would have been pretty normal. But it seemed like once there was food there and some people came by and got some, that more people started to come by. And then that probably went on for a couple of months. And then one day somebody showed up at the church and they said, well, they had been to one of the other churches in town and looking for some food. And they said, well, we don't really have any food here, but we think there's some food over at the Church of the Brethren. Why don't you go there? So they came over and we were able to get them some food. And it seemed like maybe it was a couple hours later that the pastor from that church called and said, hey, we sent somebody over to your church for some food, but we're not comfortable with it just that. We were wondering, could we also collect some food and send it over so that you have that and can do that? And would you be interested in some people volunteering to help out? And so that began to happen, and different churches began to send some food to us and volunteer, and the number of people who came by for assistance began to grow and to grow. And eventually, what started off as just one cabinet with some non-perishable food, probably in the matter of 6 months or 9 months, became 4 or 5 or 6 cabinets, and I think 3 refrigerators and 2 deep freezes, and it got to where that there was really no longer space in the children's Sunday school room to have children's Sunday school because of all of the food and the containers and stuff that were there. So that's when we began to look for another place off-site that the caring cupboard could move to. And we began to look. And just about a block away, there was a man that owned a flower shop, a Royer's Flower Shop, and he contacted us and explained to us that they were getting ready to change their location. They were going to be moving to a strip mall and vacating that building, and he would have it for sale. And he was interested in what he had heard the cupboard was doing, and said that he would be willing to sell us that old flower shop at a price that we couldn't refuse. And we said, okay. So he said he had to talk with his financial people, and he'd get back to us. And he had shown us where the property had been, its value had been assessed. It was a storefront. It had 2 apartments over top of it, and it had been assessed at a value of $195,000. And about a week later, he called us and said that he was offering us the property at less than half that price, at $90,000. If we could give him some letter of indication of the amount of that gift, so that he could take that off on his taxes. So we were able to work that out within about a month's time. We were able to talk to all the churches in Palmyra and get them to agree to go with this, because at the same time we were interested in having the caring cupboard not just be a ministry of our congregation, but a ministry of the Palmyra Area Cooperation of Churches. And in about a month's time, we were able to put all that together, except for actually getting the loan that we needed for the mortgage. But Mr. Royer was willing to accept the sale of the property on just $1,000 or so down, and a promissory note saying that we would pay the balance within 6 months. So at the turn of the year, we began to look for someone who would give us a mortgage so that we could pay off Mr. Royer. And we were just about ready to sign mortgage papers with one of the local banks when we were contacted by the Interfaith Manor, someone from the Interfaith Manor Board, which is Interfaith Manor is a housing project, subsidized rental for senior citizens. And they contacted us and said, 25 years ago, the Palmyra Area Cooperating Churches was very helpful and instrumental in getting us going. And now we want to give back. We want to help out. So they offered to loan to us the money that we needed, which was the $90,000, and we asked for an additional $40,000 for renovation. They were willing to loan us $130,000 at 0% interest. And they said we could tell them how much we wanted to pay back each month, what we thought we could handle. And Mr. Royer had tried to set the price so that we would be able to pay the mortgage off of the rent that we were getting off the 2 apartments that were above the store. And so we agreed that we would pay $500 a month toward that. And they said, if you get a month where you can't quite make that payment, don't worry about it. Just skip that month, make the next payment. Because really what we want to do is help you make this project successful. And that's what the relationship has been between the cupboard and the Interfaith Manor since then, until a week ago. And a week ago, someone from the board at the Interfaith Manor contacted the director of the caring cupboard and said, we've made a new decision, and we have decided to suspend indefinitely any additional payments on the mortgage and free those monies for the Caring Cupboard to continue to build its ministry and program. So we're delighted about that. And since that original cupboard was put together by the children, where, again, if somebody came in maybe once a month or once every 2 months, the cupboard now, I think, is providing significant food support for approximately 200 families on a weekly to monthly basis. It is it's a program begun by children. Maybe the scripture text, and the little child shall lead them, is an important text here. But it was begun by the children. It captivated the attention of the congregation, some of the adults in the congregation, and ultimately the community. It's supported strongly by the churches, by the civic organizations, by the schools, within the community. It has a broad volunteer base. It has a significant ministry, and it continues to grow and to prosper. One of the things I like to say about the cupboard is that the cupboard is a project. Palmyra has a lot of people, a lot of good people who have very deep and real needs. And Palmyra also has a lot of good people who have a lot of resources. And the cupboard is a place where the good people of Palmyra come together, those who have deep needs and those who have resources, and they're able to work together to make sure that everybody is okay. That's just been a great place. It's one of the places that I like to go to when I'm frustrated, and it just doesn't seem like we can get things to happen. Because when you go to the cupboard, the folk there have a can-do attitude, and they pick up projects and they take them on and they make them happen. And that's just a really rare kind of experience. So they're good people, they do good work for good people, and it's a program in our community that has captured attention and meets real needs. And it all started with kids.
We'll be taking a look at Palmyra's Caring Cupboard in just a moment. Remember Dan West? He had a similar dream over 70 years ago. It's now called Heifer International.
I used to have a goat. Where did it go? It went to a family who really needed it. You see, giving a family an animal is like giving them a business. The wool, milk, eggs all turn into income for medicine, school, clothing, a better home, a sustainable livelihood. Soon the family is passing on the gift of the animal's offspring to another family who does the same and on until the whole community is lifted out of poverty. That is where my goat went, and that's why you give to Heifer International.
Today we're sharing the story of the youth of the Palmyra Church of the Brethren, who 7 years ago envisioned Jesus feeding the hungry. Today, that occurs at the Caring Cupboard in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, for those who need food to make their lives a little less stressful. The Caring Cupboard is open 3 days a week for those in the community who need food to help them get through their week. It is now a program supported by 25 area churches and an all-volunteer staff who assists with the store and its clients. We talked with Terry Baker, director of the Caring Cupboard. He showed us the workings of the Caring Cupboard.
This room that we're standing in was the original storeroom when we moved into this particular building after we left the church where everything started at the Palmyra Church of the Brethren. This room there were small cabinets and some other little items that we could store stuff in. So this became our storeroom. We outgrew this very rapidly, had to tear out all the cabinets and put in shelving. And then we soon had to move out of there. And when we moved out of this room for our primary supplying, we then moved into the next room, which is behind me. I do not buy anything I cannot eat for the cupboard. These are all donated. For instance, the Palmyra Church of the Brethren just finished up a drive where the young children are collecting toilet paper, trying to get 1,000 rolls, and the senior high is trying to get 1,000 boxes of Kleenexes. You can also see some boxes of canned goods. They came from a couple, an elderly couple who just got married, and instead of presents asked that foodstuffs be brought so that they could bring it to the caring cupboard. There's over 500 pounds of food was brought here. Every year we have a Boy Scout drive in the community, and one of the years that we had to drive, the Boy Scout leaders felt that we didn't have enough storage room. And so they took this room, which was, I guess, when the store was here, a break room, and they, through the Brethren in Christ Church in town, a group of men built these shelves. This is now our primary storeroom as far as taking product into actually where the clients will be able to pick it up. This is mostly canned goods, but we do have coffee, Pete's coffee, I might add, and we have cereal in this room. We could not always store everything here, so we had to build a third storeroom. This is our latest storeroom. This used to be a hothouse. We called it the green room because it had a green fiberglass roof on it, but we couldn't store anything here. It was too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter. So what we ended up doing is the First United Methodist Church in town decided to winterize the whole area, and so we can use this now. Right now it's being used to hand out Easter meals. We anticipate handing out somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 Easter meals. We store particularly dry product over here, but it's really used strongly whenever we have the great big drives like the Boy Scouts and the Postal and the church. Some of the churches do extensive drives, and so do the school system. So we have to have a place just to dump the stuff when it comes in before we can sort it out. When we started with a few premises. We are an organic organization. A larger food bank in the area, the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, when interviewing me, asked me what plan I used, and I informed them we used the seat of our pants plan. As a result, we decided very early on we would not be a food bank per se, but a pantry. The difference between a bank and a pantry is the bank will hand you a bag of groceries. Whatever's in that bag is what you get, whether you want it or not. We decided not to do that. We allow the clients to actually shop. We base what they can take on the size of their families, and we have color-coded cards that tells them how much of what they can take. And so they only take what they want. They do not have to take anything that is not to their liking. That has worked very well. We also decided that we were going to make an effort to serve the working poor. And therefore, our income acceptances are higher than what the government's would be. Those were all things that we wanted to make sure was taken care of when we started, and we have continued to do that. We're working with about 120 to 130 families a week. Unlike many food banks, we're every week, the clients can come in every week, and we have 4 different times that they can come in to make sure that we find a time convenient, particularly for those who are working, but also for the elderly who do not like to come out at night. Now, this room that you're looking at was a sunken garden. You walk down 4 steps, and they had planters all over the place. Another United Methodist church, Gravel Hill, they came in, put a floor on, made a room for us. They put in 2 bathrooms. We had to have bathrooms to meet the codes. They put the kitchen in. We do not cook food for the clients, but we do a lot of prep work. Behind the camera is the only office, is the office of the client manager. She is the only employee that's paid, and she's paid part-time and not paid enough to do all the hours that she puts in. Other than that, we are an all-volunteer organization, running about 78 volunteers through here every 2 weeks.
Perhaps you've heard the song, Pass It On. The words say, it only takes a spark to get a fire going. And it only took the imagination of a youth group thinking, what would Jesus do? To put into motion a wonderful way to reach out in the community. That's what's happening in Palmyra, PA. Please let us know what's happening in your neighborhood. This is Brent Carlson for Brethren Voices, wishing you peace.
All those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod, all those who tread the path he trod shall be called the friends of God. May his peace begin with me. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin